Welcome back to Major Antonio's presentation of The Yankee Mining Squadron by Reginald Belknap. Chapter 17, Results.
Altogether, there were 13 regular excursions and 2 special ones by the American squadron and 11 by the British squadron. In all, 70,117 mines were planted, of which 56,571, or 4/5, were American. In its 230 miles length, the barrage varied in width from 15 to 35 miles, so that a submarine could not attempt a crossing without being in danger for from 1 to 3 hours, or twice as long if running submerged. The obstruction extended to a depth of 240 feet, except over the eastern section of 50 miles length, where the deepest mines were submerged 125 feet. In small fields of a few score or hundreds of mines, laid piecemeal by fixed marks, the mines in adjacent lines are usually staggered so as to have and block the opposite intervals, but in an open sea minefield of immense area, far beyond sight of any marks and laid at 12 knots speed or faster, no such nicety is possible or necessary. The Great Northern Barrage opposed from 6 to 10 lines of mines to a submarine on the surface and 3 to 4 lines more at whatever depth the submarine might think he could safely pass. Absolute impassability never was attained nor expected. At the thickest part, a submarine had 1 chance in 10 of getting through. The explosion of defective mines had left some thin spots, but who could tell where? Such a minefield is not so much like a Chinese wall as it is like a stretch of rough, treacherous country whose crossing would always be a desperate venture. Submarines are known to have crossed the barrier, but they all feared it, and as early as 8th of July, 1918, some experienced its deadly effect. From the very circumstances of the barrier's great extent and the absence of observers, the full toll, in damage as well as destruction, may never be known. The official statistics of lost German submarines, compiled March 1, 1919, credit the Northern Barrage with the destruction of 4 submarines certainly, 2 more probably, and possibly still 2 more. An equal number were severely damaged, though not destroyed, and it is considered probable by the British Admiralty that the loss of 5 other submarines, the cause of which cannot be definitely proven, is accounted for by the Northern Barrage. Thus, by reliable records, the toll was 17. Indications during the sweeping up of the barrage tend to confirm this. Besides these, to the squadron's credit should be added the 2 submarines reported lost in the North Irish Channel, in the field which consisted of British mines laid by our Baltimore. The summary of activities of U.S. naval forces in European waters, issued by Admiral Sims, says further, "There is no doubt that this barrage had a considerable moral effect on the German naval crews, for it is known that several submarines hesitated some time before crossing. Also, reports from German sources are that the barrage caused no small amount of panic in some of the submarine flotillas. It is also probable that the barrage played a part in preventing raids on Allied commerce by fast enemy cruisers." Unquote. In thus deterring a sally by enemy cruisers, the barrage aided the mission of the American Battleship Division 6, under Rear Admiral T.S. Rogers, USN, flagship Utah, which was sent over to guard the convoys and was based on Berehaven, Ireland. One officially reported statement of a German submarine captain said that 3 submarines, including his own, had been damaged by the barrage, but all had reached port. The injury in his case prevented his diving. Other accounts, in the press and from individuals, give some indication of the moral effect produced by this great minefield, reaching to the German army and also among civilians. It would be interesting to know what proportion of the submarines that passed the line of the barrier were harmed by it. But the effect upon the enemy went far beyond such tangible injuries. Every successive case of being damaged yet escaping destruction would increase the moral effect and magnify the number of losses that would be attributed to the barrage, as other submarines failed to return. Official summaries rate depth charges first, mines next, in importance among the 5 most effective measures against submarines. A mark of royal approval was indirectly conferred upon the mine force undertaking after only 1 excursion in the bestowal upon Rear Admiral Strauss of the honor Knight Commander of St. Michael and St. George, and our operations received mention later by the First Sea Lord of the British Admiralty in his reply to the congratulatory message of Admiral Sims upon the conclusion of the armistice. Quote, "We recognize with a feeling of gratitude the debt we owe to the United States Navy for its wholehearted support during the past 18 months, not only in the submarine campaign and extensive mine-laying program, but also in sending the Atlantic Squadron to reinforce the Grand Fleet." Unquote. During the 4 months intervening, the press made occasional brief reference to the effectiveness of the North Sea barrier, but compared to other operations, ours received scant mention. A veil of general silence was deemed necessary for our doings, and the policy of concealing the destruction of submarines stood in the way of even telling our men the few authentic reports we did receive of damage to the enemy from our own work. One account, widely copied in the British and home press, described the barrier, which we had begun and were still at work upon, as already a fact and a British accomplishment. And when, in October, the story was released in America, the accounts which reached us dwelt mainly upon the parts of the work done on shore. As the Secretary of the Navy put it, the mine-laying was done with no glamour, nor romance, nor appreciation. It was not in the character of our officers and men, however, to feel discontent. Thoroughly interested in their work and convinced of its importance, they were satisfied to have it progressing well and to wait for their part to receive its due. Admiral Sims expressed his recognition shortly before we sailed from Portland, England, for home. All the commanding officers, many other officers, and 25 men from each mine layer were assembled on board the San Francisco, and when the Admiral came on board, his flag was broken at the main truck. After brief mention of the large numbers and the many activities of our naval forces in European waters, he said that the mine force, quote, had done a stunt the like of which had not been done in the world before. After we came into the war, we designed a mine, built it, equipped the mine layers, sent them over to this side, and planted more mines in less space of time than any nation in the world ever thought of doing before. As to the efficiency of the mine barrier, that is something that has not concerned you so particularly as those who designed it. But fitting out the vessels, learning to handle the mines, planting them, and going through the strenuous work has been really one of the finest accomplishments of the Navy on this side as a nautical feat. A piece of seamanship, it has been perfectly successful. Another thing particularly gratifying is that the conduct of the men of the mine force at their bases and at sea has been exemplary. I think one thing that has impressed itself on this side more than any other is the conduct of our men. They were inclined to regard us, when we first came over here, as men out of the wilds of America. I think they rather wanted to strengthen their police force when we came around. They found out it was not necessary. Not only have you created a good impression by your conduct as far as seamanship is concerned, but you have created a splendid impression socially. We hear it on all sides. I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And when you get back there, you can tell them all about it. You need not feel that you have to tell them you did the whole thing. Just tell them a straight story, and you may be more than satisfied with that. Unquote. The Secretary of the Navy's annual report characterizes the Northern Barrage as the outstanding anti-submarine offensive project of the year, and elsewhere he wrote of it as a truly wonderful work, the story of it one of the thrilling contributions of what the Navy men did in the war. Admiral Benson, Chief of Naval Operations, our highest professional authority, considered the achievement of the mine force, quote, one of the most successful efforts of the whole war by any of the forces engaged. Not only has the North Sea barrage had a deterring effect necessarily on the enemy, but it has convinced the European nations that there is no task which the United States once undertakes to perform that they cannot and will not successfully carry through. I believe that the moral effect alone of the North Sea barrage, not only on the enemy, but on our friends, to say nothing of the excellent training to our own personnel, will be worth more to the country than all the money and time spent upon it. Unquote. Actual serious damage to submarines, in amount comparing well with that done by patrol and escort vessels in thrice the period of time, panic among submarine flotillas, probable deterrence of cruiser raids, and considerable moral effect at home and abroad, these results were well worthwhile. And is it not more than probable that the barrage weighed heavily towards the German collapse? Imperfect though it was, expected to be so in its first consideration, still there it stood, a deadly menace already, which could and would become more and more effective, the more the submarine campaign was persisted in. That campaign could not hope to survive it.
Chapter 18, General Living Conditions.
No account of the mining excursions would be complete without some description of the conditions in which the ship's companies worked. The accommodations on board were sufficient for their officers, and, when clear of mines and the weather such as to permit hatches and airports to be open, the crew's quarters were roomy and comfortable. Upon embarking mines, however, the crew's spaces in all ships except Shawmut and Aroostook became very cramped, and as the season advanced, mines were on board during a greater part of the time, while rainy weather became more frequent, thus making more discomfort on board with less diversion on shore. The simplest movement below decks was interfered with by the mines. Moreover, their presence forbade moving pictures on board, restricted smoking, and limited the happy hours and similar forms of diversion, so common in our Navy and so particularly desirable in our circumstances. After the third excursion, it became the rule to embark the mines as soon as possible after returning to base. For the one night following a planting, the ship's decks would be clear for hammocks, and all the watch below might then swing on their billets. Occasionally, there would be one more night before the mines would be in the way again, but generally, most of the ships would begin to take coal or mines on the day following their return to port. Thus, the period of rest allowed, after the physical exertion and the tension of a mining excursion, was brief. Ventilation was always poor at sea, especially in the Roanoke and Quinbog classes. The intended ventilation systems had not been completed, no ship having more than 60% of the designed supply of air and some less than 40%. On the lower mine decks, with steam on the elevator pumps and mine winches, and considerable numbers of men in the track crews, the air became very close, foul, and hot. As the weather grew bad, causing seasickness below, the condition of the lower decks and the air may be imagined, making an extensive cleaning and airing out imperative immediately on reaching port. All the ship's crews numbered considerably more than originally intended, because extra men were found to be needed, and still others were taken in training for the general naval supply. Notwithstanding the crowding and other unfavorable conditions, partial inspections in the course of the summer and thorough inspections at the close showed that in upkeep and cleanliness, as well as in mining, steaming, signaling, tactical handling, boating, messing, and discipline, the state of affairs in all departments was highly creditable to any type of ship. The crowded conditions on board, the lack of deck space, and the tense and arduous character of the men's normal work made diversion on shore more than ordinarily necessary. Thanks to the energy and tact of Commander Kanaga and the squadron athletic officer, Lieutenant Commander Hewlett, and to the cooperation of the ship's athletic officers, interest in athletics was well sustained. A series of well-played baseball games giving entertainment to the townspeople as well as the men, and doing much to promote friendly relations, as described in an earlier chapter. And thanks are due in large measure to the local residents for their hospitality extended to both officers and men. The opening of the Northern Meetings Building, well equipped by the American YMCA, and a large reception by Captain and Mrs. Rowley at Inverness, and a similar initiative by Rear Admiral and Mrs. Piers at Invergordon, gave such things a good start, which carried on throughout our stay. Inverness being headquarters for the relief of prisoners of war in Germany belonging to the Cameron Highlanders, and Invergordon for the Seaforth Highlanders, our people attended the fairs and sports in considerable numbers, bringing in new life and spirit, as well as swelling the receipts. The bands from our two bases and from the San Francisco were in constant demand through all the neighboring country, and exhibition games of baseball made another drawing feature. After the Black Isle fete, at the ancient little town of Fortrose, the manager wrote that the San Francisco's band had brought in 27 pounds from the sale of programs alone, and the whole intake was more than double the previous years. For the Cameron Highlanders sports, the Countess of Elgin organized a toy-making competition, offering souvenir prizes. Our men entered into the idea with more interest than expected, producing many articles of real value, none that did not bring a good price, and helping materially to make the toy stall a great success. Before sailing for home, the men afloat and ashore combined in presenting a fund exceeding $500 to equip a new school playground for the Inverness boys and girls. When the summer had passed and darkness came on early, dances became frequent, the Scottish lassies quickly learning the American steps. The erstwhile quiet little Queensgate Hotel did a rushing business, its ballroom being taken by sailors or officers 6 nights in the week. And the men of Base 18, together with amateur talent of Inverness, staged a show, of which Admiral Sims, who saw it in London, said, "I saw your show, the second part of it, in London the other day. It had anything of its kind I have seen skinned to death. There isn't another one that holds a candle to it." It is particularly gratifying that the show included a number of the young girls of Inverness. The show was clean and refined and splendid in every way. It was a pleasure to go behind the curtain and thank them and to kiss that wee bit of a girl who used to do the dance. Unquote. These diversions kept the men in good spirits and up to the mark in their work. They were the more useful because of our comparative isolation and concealment. The best was made of whatever came, with unabated zeal, steady improvement, and cheerfulness always. Despite the high prices of clothing and the excessive wear and tear on uniforms from the mines, the crews kept themselves, as well as their ships, in creditable appearance. Their discipline was excellent, their behavior on shore on all occasions repeatedly evoking favorable comment, both official and private, and their fine spirit showed also in a handsome subscription to the Liberty loans, the squadron taking of the 4th loan $5 for each mine in their fields. As a visiting naval officer reported, the whole mine force is short on criticism and complaints, but long on work and results, and the Navy should be intensely proud of them.
Chapter 19, Farewell to the Highlands.
The squadron's task was not finished with the signing of the armistice, for some of the unused mines had to be carried back. 2 weeks passed before orders came for home. All kinds of rumors were rife meanwhile, and the wait was the more trying because of the influenza quarantine against amusement resorts. This had its benefit in that the mine force escaped the epidemic almost entirely, but with the season too far advanced and rainy for athletics and the YMCA closed, the quarantine bore hard on the men afloat. So long as the mines were on board, no relaxation of discipline could be permitted, and in order to keep the men well occupied, infantry and rifle practice were added to the ship drills, and formal inspections of ships were begun. The prospect of these inspections always keys things up. All ships did well, but the last one inspected, Roanoke, Captain Stearns, surpassed all expectation, being a model, judged by the highest standard, of efficient organization, training, and administration, pervaded by a uniformly high and loyal spirit. One great test was to rig for getting the mines out in case of fire, though a forlorn hope at best, since 15 minutes, the time in which the mines would explode when exposed to fire, would scarcely suffice to begin discharging. The promise of Commander Beck, Roanoke's executive officer, to be ready in 10 minutes was received by his colleagues with derision. When the test came, he stood quietly by, letting his men work without coaching. A flicker of patient resignation came over his face as he saw that some zealot had disabled one of the winches to be used by putting oil on the friction clutch, because it looked like bright work. But in spite of the consequent delay, all was ready in only 6 minutes. "I thought I was some little executive myself," said one colleague, "but I've got nothing more to say." Fortunately, the quarantine was raised in time for full enjoyment of our last week in the Highlands. Our friends omitted nothing in hospitality and goodwill. Entertaining on board had been an extreme rarity during the mine-laying, but now it could be permitted, and the squadron had the honor of a visit from the Mackintosh of Mackintosh, Chief of Clan Chattan, Colonel of the Cameron Highlanders, Lord Lieutenant of Invernessshire, who had been most hospitable to us. All the captains were assembled on board the San Francisco to receive him and afterwards to lunch with him. He inspected the crew and ship with Captain Butler, his first visit to an American man-of-war since 1870 in Gibraltar, on board the old Kearsarge. Chancing to ask a man's name, the reply, "Scott, sir," made everything after that go smoothly. On our National Thanksgiving Day, Rear Admiral Clinton-Baker sent a message to Rear Admiral Strauss, which, with the latter's reply, expressed cordial satisfaction in working together and in the mutual regard and respect sprung up, which would help to bring the two great navies into still closer union. A theater party and reception at Invergordon and a formal dinner and ball at Inverness were given that day by British naval officers. The ball was held in the Northern Meeting Rooms, the annual assembly place of all the Highland nobility and gentry. This was the first dance there since the war began, and it was a most enjoyable affair, picturesque with dress kilts and lively with the Highland fling. Next day, the enlisted men were given a ball in the same place, which usually held 700, but on this occasion, 1,400. Next morning my orderly Rose could not wait for me to appear, but woke me up to hear. "Commodore, the British treated us fine." On Saturday, the American officers gave a return ball, which was as well attended as we could desire. And so, at midnight, festivities ended. Our sailing being set for Sunday midnight, there could be no gatherings at the actual departure, but just before noon, Captain Rowley came out to the San Francisco with Mrs. Rowley and a small party to say goodbye, and at Invergordon, Rear Admiral Piers went on board the Roanoke to use her radio telephone for his parting message to me. From late that afternoon until midnight, the flagship's signal bridge had no respite, farewell messages and replies continuing until we were clear of the harbor. All were the same tenor: appreciation of the work accomplished, pleasant and friendly memory, goodbye and Godspeed. The recollections taken away of beautiful country and kindly people could only make us wish to revisit them. Among the last signals exchanged with the shore were, quote, "To Commander Mine Squadron 1. The Commander Mine Force wishes to thank the officers and the men of the Mine Squadron for their efficient work and loyal cooperation and wishes them a happy return to the United States. To Commander Mine Force, the Squadron Commander in behalf of the captains, officers, and men of Mine Squadron 1 returns sincere acknowledgement for the Commander Mine Force. Signal of thanks and good wishes. The squadron is deeply gratified to receive his approbation for its part in his unprecedented undertaking so successfully accomplished."
Chapter 20, Scapa Flow.
The mine force was not represented at the surrender of the German fleet, but on our way to Portland, where leave was to be given before sailing for home, we passed through Scapa Flow to see the surrendered ships. As our long, single column approached the British squadrons lying at anchor, on guard, a signal invited us to steer between their lines, and as we wound in between the battleships and battlecruisers, their crews were assembled on deck, very striking in solidity of mass and evenness of rank and file. They cheered each passing mine layer, our crews running from side to side to make response, the bands playing the national airs and signals being exchanged. Quote, "To Admiral 1st Battle Squadron. From Commander Mine Squadron 1. Captain Belknap presents his compliments and regrets that his movement orders do not permit paying his respects in person to Admiral Madden. The U.S. Mine Squadron sends congratulations upon the great success that has brought about this unprecedented spectacle. 0919, from Admiral Madden to Captain Belknap. Thank you for your 0919. I wish the mining squadron speedy return home and have much regret in parting with such a splendid force." Unquote. Then silence was ordered as we neared the Germans' anchorage. First came the destroyers to the left, moored in pairs with a few British destroyers at their head, and then, on the west side of Cava Island, the large ships came into view. Many signs of their downfall in state were evident, and the sight was to me the more impressive from having seen that fleet in its ascendancy. Now, in some ships scarcely a man was to be seen. On others the rails were crowded, officers and men mingling together to gaze on their untouched bait. In quiet procession, we had nearly passed them all, when the British trawlers on the opposite side, holding the net across Hoy Sound, had been holding it in fair weather and foul for 3 long years. Seeing our flag and knowing what our work had been, broke out in long and loud blasts of their whistles, having crews too small for an audible cheer. The San Francisco responded with the usual 3 whistle blasts, which the ships following repeated in succession, but one of them blew her siren instead, and that started them all again. For a few moments there was a fearful din, and how this must have struck the British ships on the other side of Cava was indicated by the next signals exchanged soon afterwards. Quote, from Captain Belknap. To Admiral Madden, many thanks for your kind message. The Mine Squadron has much enjoyed its duty with the Grand Fleet and is much honored by the association. From Admiral Madden to Captain Belknap. Reply, thank you for your hilarious mining squadron, a speedy trip home, and have much regret in parting with such a brave bunch. Unquote. Clearing the island, we passed HMS Lion, flagship of Vice Admiral Pakenham, who had commanded the support on our last excursion. The Lion was steaming back and forth across the way out, like a sentry on his beat, a ready check on any German ship that might attempt escape. Replying to my greeting, the Lion flashed from Vice Admiral Pakenham, quote, I greatly regret that only a farewell signal is possible. You take with you not only my personal regards, but the gratitude and admiration of the battlecruiser force and united wishes for a happy return to your country. Unquote. As the squadron passed out of the harbor, the garrisons at the entrance turned out and cheered, and one of the seaplanes that had patrolled for submarines while the squadron was planting on some of its excursions sailed over and around the San Francisco, each time nearer, until he swooped by with a roar and a wave of the hand, so near that his wingtip passed not 20 feet from the bridge. 3 months afterwards came a letter from Vice Admiral Sir William C. Pakenham, quote, I trust old friends on your side have enjoyed return to their own country, but we miss them much over here. When your force steamed through Scapa, I thought providence as well as skill must have been on your side to enable you to pass through a period of such dangerous service, and yet to take all home.
This concludes today's reading of the Yankee Mining Squadron by Reginald Belknap. Join us also the day after tomorrow for the subsequent part. Subscribe to Major Intonio's channel. Thank you for listening, and so long.